and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. We are here for our final our divisional round game preview, and this time it's the game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. And with me, I couldn't get the Bills fans Byron to return this week, but returning is our Bengals fan Rory. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. All the better after last week's result.
yeah, yeah. I imagine. I mean, obviously this game you went into heavy favourites. Was there a point in that game where you thought you were gonna bottle it and lose that game?
I think there was, yeah, definitely. It felt that obviously that turning point with the Hubbard touchdown. It felt like if they'd have gone in, then we were on the ropes really. With the defensive line injuries and stuff like that. So yeah, it definitely was a bit scary. And we started off sort of firing on all cylinders, and then it all went to pieces really. And credit to the Ravens, they put up a gutsy battle, and I did always think it was going to be like that with it being a divisional game. It was never going to be easy, but thankfully we made it through in the end.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we had the same thing in our game, is that we kept that close. I think one of the main reasons was that in our game was for the same reason, the fact that it is, division rivalry. These two teams play twice a year against each other. They play every year. And I think there's definitely an element of, especially in your game, where obviously the two coaches have been there for many years now. I think it's a case of, they know each other very well, even before this season. So I think, if you had, say if it was not against a divisional rival and it was, that much of a sort of on paper divisional, not no, sorry, mismatch, I do think that it would have been a lot more high. I think we saw it last year when the Eagles played the Bucks and the Steelers played the Chiefs, where these teams who aren't division rivals don't play each other every year, and they were massive underdogs and massive favourites respectively. I think that's would be a different story. But I think, as you say, the fact it was a divisional game, I think it's a makes it a massive thing, and that's probably why both those games we're talking about, or even you can even count the Seahawks 49ers in it as well for those first three quarters. I think that's probably why they know each other so well. They schemed against each other so well. Game planned for twice before. So yeah, it was certainly an exciting game, and I think that whilst Tyler Huntley did an okay and good enough job, I do think that if that doesn't show why they should pay Lamar Jackson, I don't know really what else they've got to be proved really, unless they've got something they know that we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it. You can. There was always going to be the limitations of it. Was I think the game was always going to come down to whether the Ravens could keep us down to a certain score if they could keep us below 30, and I, I think that was always going to be the key, their defensive display, and they did do that in the end. And obviously, you could see the way they controlled the game after the first quarter, where they sort of ran the ball well, and they were maintaining drives for long periods of time, and it sort of took the ball out of Burrow's hands. It was always going to be the case, but obviously, I think if they'd have had Lamar Jackson, it would have been a completely different game. And yeah, so as a divisional rival, certainly the prospect of him leaving the division and going somewhere else is something that can only benefit the Bengals, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's interesting how both those games talking about both involve a game where if the starting quarterback was playing, that team would have won, and both the teams that won the game anyway are playing each other in the Bengals and the Bills. So I think both teams certainly, I don't know whether you agree, both teams will want to bounce back from that. And I think to be honest, both teams will be fine after. I don't think that performance from both those teams, the Bengals and the Bills, really is a true representation of what they're like. And I think that I think next week certainly one, if not both teams, are going to be going into this game and look, I think, a much better team than they did last week.
The weight of being a favourite, I think everybody expected the Bengals and Bills to be in this position. But as we know, the NFL is such a competitive league that really you can't count anybody out. It's a very difficult thing to say, oh yeah. Even when we might say, oh, 7 point favourite, and it sounds like a lot, but in a game situation, you're still within. Even if you beat somebody by 7 points, you could still be in that game right up until the end. So yeah, I think that's the thing really. I think it was always going to be difficult for both teams, but that's the sort of start to the playoffs that you want, something that shakes you up and gets you into action. I think both teams have sort of suffered bloodied noses, and they'll be more alive to it this week, and it'd be interesting to see them go head to head.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned in a previous podcast that I think often the case is when you see these, see America's game, for example, you see a team when they go through their season. There's always that one game that you look back on, whether it's even different sports. Look at whether it's teams who win a Premier League or Champions League trophy, or say when Europe or USA win the Ryder Cup, or any sport when you see a documentary about a team that wins a certain trophy, there is that game or maybe even two games where the team overcomes adversity and they have these dodgy games. I think that whether the Bengals or the Bills, if they do go the whole way, I think those teams will look back at that game and that'll be one of those games to look back on and going, we got out of jail on that one, we got through. But that's what a lot of good teams do. A lot of good teams do have these games. You can't be perfect every game. No team wins a trophy or competition, without having these games where they aren't at their best, that they grind it through. And I think that both teams will definitely be stronger from that. Whereas I do think on the flip side, looking at the Chiefs, who've not really had too much adversity this year, they breezed their division, playoff bye, not really had a hard game in weeks. So I think that, whoever wins out of that game going into the game, who we think is going to be the Chiefs, I think that could actually be in your favor because you've had that game already where you have dealt with that negativity and that adversity. And I think that will really help you guys, Bengals, if you do win, going into that AFC Championship game.
That ratchets up, and it feels like that's the games that are sort of a precursor to the Super Bowl. So yeah, I think I mean, the Bengals will have had a difficult run if they get through. We said that last time. I think that we've got through the divisional rival in the Ravens. We're now have to take on the Bills in Buffalo, and then we'll have to take on the Chiefs there as well. So it couldn't really get much more difficult path. So I think they'll be ready. If they should they be fortunate to get to a Super Bowl, then I think they'll be ready for it.
Now, going into the game, there's obviously one looming uncertainty going on with the Bengals is the fact that Lyle Collins is out now, and there's a lot of doubt about the offensive line. And we all know what happened last year with the Bengals. Even though Burrow has improved massively, or the line has massively improved in protecting Burrow, does that with the defensive players they have in that defensive line for Buffalo, does that concern you? The fact that there is going to be problems in that O line, and Joe Burrow is already a guy who can get sacked easily. Is that a concern for you going into the game?
Yeah, massively. And I think now even well, the Jonah Williams injury, I think it was dislocated knee. So he's week to week. I don't think he'll play, and I don't think Alex Kappa's going to be ready either. So that's three of the guys now: Collins, Kappa, and Williams that were Collins and Kappa were brought in this off season, and Williams has he's not had a great season particularly, but he's shown flashes of being a good solid left tackle. So we are down to the bones now, and Jackson Carman looks likely the starter at left tackle. That is a concern. Cordell Volson's left guard, and he has had a good season to say he's come in on his rookie season and done a job at guard. But yeah, there's concern. You see Ed Oliver and guys like that on the front. It's going to be difficult controlling that, and it's going to be a case of Burrow's going to have to hit those quick throws. I think we're going to see plenty of slants. We're going to see screens. We're going to see getting it into Chase, getting into his hands early, and him making the extra yardage and trying to take advantage of their secondary in that way. So I think we'll see a bit of a different style. I don't think we'll see as many of those deep shots because I simply don't think he'll have the time in the pocket this week.
Yeah, and I think that's a massive thing. I think that might be one of the biggest sort of keys to the game is that battle between the trenches. And of course, on the flip side, going into the Bills O-line, we saw, of course, last week Josh Allen struggled a lot in this game, and there were moments where he was shaky. And I think that ourselves using a lot of the zero blitz, and it caused Josh Allen problems. I mean, looking at the defensive side of things for the Bills and the Bengals, I mean, the actual is not much different. You look at points allowed, run defense, yards, and sort of those two things particularly, they're very similar. But I think one thing that key, the Bills have got a much better pass defense than the Bengals. So I think, do you think you have the guys on the D line to trouble Josh Allen like the Dolphins had last week?
I think we do. I think we last week wasn't a great example. I think the Ravens got a fairly solid line, and I do think the Bills probably have a bit more weakness there that we could take advantage of. We're using Trey Hendrickson a bit more sparingly. Cam Sample's been coming in and doing a job at defensive end, so I think Hendrickson, they're trying to keep him fresh, keep him um, healthy and ready for a game like this where maybe that pass rush could come into its own. And obviously we've seen Sam Hubbard, he's an effort guy, but he has been really good with the sack count this year. So I think they will cause them trouble. And I think they will do it in different ways as well. Obviously, Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, he schemes a lot of stuff up. So I'd expect to see some Mike Hilton blitzes from the nickel, might see some Von Bell, some safety blitzes. So I think there'll be different ways of doing it, and I think he'll mix it up and have a game plan for Allen.
Yeah, it should be quite a fascinating game, and I think this might be the most exciting game of the weekend. I think I'm looking forward to, weirdly, Eagles Giants the most. I do think that the Giants can win that game. I think they will. I think they could shock the Eagles and win that game, and I think that makes it. But I think this one here, I think for me, is really intriguing because of the fact that both teams did struggle so much, and the fact that you've got two-star quarterbacks in Burrow and Allen. For me, I'd say two of the best three quarterbacks in the league are in this game, and I think that you got Jamar Chase, Stefan Diggs, Gabe Davis, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary. It's a great offensive, showing, and I think that for a lot of neutrals, I think they're going to really. I think I'll see you guys, but yourself will enjoy it quite as much. Probably be quite a nervous affair, but I think for quite a lot of neutrals, I think that it's going to be quite an exciting game, and I believe it's on at 8 p.m. on Sunday in the UK on Sky Sports, and that will make it 3 p.m. Eastern for those watching in America. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this game a lot. Now it's time to predict the winner of this game. So over to you first, Rory. Who's going to win this game?
It's a difficult one. It really isn't a toss up. I'm not going to go against my own team, so I will pick the Bengals, but I do think it'll be very close, and I'd probably edge to something like 31-28, and sort of a field goal difference. It could be a clutch field goal. Maybe we see Evan McPherson get back into a bit of kicking form and seal the deal right at the end.
Okay, I like that. I mean, I'm going to go for the Bills win. I just purely for the fact that there could be the injuries at O-line for the Bengals are worrying. But I do think the Bengals won't go out without a fight, and I think I'm going to put it at something like 35-25 to the Bills. I think it'd be a good game, but I think the Bills will probably have just a bit too much, I think, in that battle between the trenches. But yeah, that is the end of our preview. Sorry it's shorter than the others to our listeners. It's always harder with just one guest to make it as long than it is with two guests. But obviously we hope to have Rory on next week, and we should have him on with what I think could be a Chiefs fan, but you don't know either. We had earlier on, we had Lee White and Brad on to preview that game. So one of them two will be hopefully in the same room as you, Rory, if you do win on the Sunday. We asked you last week. We'll ask you again this week if anything's changed. You mentioned, of course, before that you like to watch these games with sometimes your parents. Will that be the case for you on Sunday?
Not this Sunday. I think I'm going to watch it. I've got one pal who is also a Bengals fan, relatively new Bengals fan, so I think we'll probably sit down and watch it together. It's a better time, so you'll be a bit more snacks and beers, and it'd be quite nice on a Sunday evening, better than setting the alarm and waking up and having multiple coffees to get through like last weekend.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's that's one of the things that drew me to the NFL was that normally my Sundays before NFL were just normally sat down and watching some absolute rubbish on TV, whether I don't know, songs of praise or something, or like Street Come Dancing in the all. It's just I think that really saved me when I was a teenager. But and your friend who's a Bengals fan, have you basically forced that on him, or did he choose a Bengals?
He did choose it, but obviously he was we've been quite successful and quite fun to watch, so it was an easy pick for him, and obviously it makes it a bit more interesting. If two of you can watch the same games, it's better than sort of arguing over which game to be on a Sunday evening. So it's nice to both settle down and be able to have a couple of beers and watch it together and both be rooting the same way. So
brilliant. That's always a good story. I mean, I wish I had more friends from home that like the NFL. I think it's very hard to convince my friends from home to like that sport, even though they like rugby league and stuff like that. It's they just can't get into it. But hopefully one day I can convert them. But yeah, that has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast. Thank you, first of all, Rory, for coming on.
Thank you for having me again. Yeah, always a pleasure.
No problem at all, mate. And I will see you guys next time.